Hey everyone, we're going to dive into today talking about a topic when it comes to SaaS production and essentially the latter part of a SaaS production that can really make or break whether you're going to publish your SaaS and have it live and have the ability to start accepting customers. This topic is pretty fundamental, as if you plan on creating a SaaS or going down this journey in this path, you should know this piece of information, as this is going to allow you to gauge better for a production date. Now, what I mean by that essentially is this is probably not talked about a lot due to the fact of how limited this information around building out AI SaaS is. But the specific thing that could really make or break your underlying SaaS is whatever APIs you're using in your SaaS, whether they give you access to more of their API calls. So let's go and dive in a little bit further of what I mean by that. So essentially, if you watched my other video here where I discussed 3 different SaaS ideas you could start specifically for artificial intelligence integrated SaaSes, one of them was referring to a Gmail SaaS. You can go ahead and check out that video if you want to learn more about that topic and that idea. But what occurs here essentially is when you use the API available for Gmail in this context, you'd enable this and you'd have the ability to have a limited amount of API calls quota that you have access to per day. One other thing I want to point out here is check it out, $300 of credit. I mean, this really shows you can start this for free. You're getting $300 for free from Google to access their APIs and play around with them. But beyond all that, essentially, let me go ahead and take a step back here and explain a little bit more what I mean by API calls. So what occurs is when you say enable in this context, I am afforded a limited amount of actions I can do to Gmail. So what that means in the context of Gmail is I can only send so many emails, I can only reply to so many emails, I can only, add labels to so many emails with AI and actual software API calls. Therefore, in that context, we are limited to how much we could scale because we are at a developer level of API calls. Therefore, in that context, maybe you could realistically only support 1 to 2 people because they really make sure that you only have, very limited amount of daily calls. So this means 2 major things when you're building out your potential SaaS. The first thing it means is that there's going to be a delay when you are production ready on when you can actually make it live. And the second thing is that essentially there is a chance you get rejected here. So let's go ahead and talk about the 2 possible cases here and how to proceed. So the first possible case is this. You have done the first stage of building out a SaaS, which is going to be 1 to 2. Honestly, I'm not even going to give a time frame here because everyone's different. So essentially months or however long it takes you to develop the SaaS is going to be in your local machine. This is going to be essentially where you do most of your work. This is where you're developing it. And then we're going to go ahead and move to a staging environment. In the staging environment, this is going to be an exact copy of the production environment, but in the context of, in the future, when you want to push out an update, you'd push it towards your staging environment, and then you'd push it towards the production environment. So your staging environment, we're looking at 1 to 2 weeks here of staging. Now, this is in the context of a fresh start, new launch, so on and so forth. Staging environment in the future and local environment in the future is going to have different timeframes associated with it. We're going to go ahead and assume here that we are just starting to launch this product here. So we're dealing with 1.0 and we haven't hit the ground yet where the product is live. So finally we hit production here. And the reason I'm making this video, and I know this video is extremely niche, but I know in the future, and I know there's people right now watching this that want to take this journey. And this is stuff we're learning because we're doing it right now. We're actually building this out right now, and we're in the production stage right now, and we are about to launch. So right now the product it works. We have 1.0 available. It currently works perfectly fine, and it works how we want it to work. We're just in the stage right now that I'm talking about right here, where essentially we're dealing with requesting higher API usage. So I want to give you this little caveat knowledge of what we're learning about this current stage. So we're in production. Or we are now in production in the sense of now we are at the last leg here where we're just requesting higher API. So when we get users on the platform, we're not capped out. So what does this mean? This means 2 things. First thing is when you're building out in the local stage and you're building out in the staging stage, understand what API is associated with your underlying SaaS. So for the context of the Gmail example, we had 2 major APIs. We had OpenAI's API, and this is for the context of obviously artificial intelligence, right? So this is what makes your SaaS have value in this realm. And then we had Gmail's API. So we know that essentially since we have OpenAI's API and we have Gmail's API, and maybe both are at a quota level where it's fine in the development stage, but not fine if you were to get a 500 users on your platform daily or per month. Therefore, something to take into account of is that when you are going towards production, you need to request higher API usage. Now let's go ahead and break down what that means for each of these platforms. So the OpenAI's API, what that means is going to be what is your cap per month that they're going to allow you to spend on AI usage. So a lot of starter accounts is only 250 USD per month. That's not going to work at scale. So get early there. Essentially, when you have a product, you can provide a link and you can kind of show your MVP. This is when you request a higher usage from OpenAI, and this is in the context of billing amount. So depending on how much you think you're going to get in the beginning, I would say a comfortable amount you'd want to start with is at least 2,000 USD you're afforded at the beginning of launching your SaaS. Knowing this, that is really contextual on how much usage your SaaS does per task. For example, to maybe do the function of adding an automatic tag to an email, does that only cost like half a penny? Or is there some complex function in 1.0 that costs like 30 cents? If it does, then, constitute how much you want to request there. But that's going to be the first thing there. So requesting from OpenAI's API more underlying usage, the return, and essentially when they get back to you is going to be within 3 to 5 days. So now we've added 3 to 5 days on production timeline where, in theory, if I had access to OpenAI's API at the level I want and I had access to Gmail's API at the level I want, then I can launch right away. I'll be ready to go. But we don't. So we got to make sure we do this correct, because the last thing you want to do is launch a product and not be able to handle if scale incurs. So 3 to 5 days on that. This is where it gets interesting. So OpenAI shouldn't be too bad when it comes to increasing your quota usage. Google is where it gets a little bit interesting. So Google, this is where the process seems to be taking a little bit longer than you would want it to do. So I think the standard is 3 to 5 days, but in theory, if they wanted to push it further, it could take 4 to 6 weeks. So what does that mean for you? That means that getting to a MVP as fast as possible, getting to a version of 1.0 as fast as possible is fundamental in this competitive market, because of the fact that there's a chance here that you could have built out a complete version of 1.0 and have to wait 6 weeks in order to get access to the API at a level that is scalable. Therefore, that is why we've been encouraging here on this channel. And when you're building this out, make your 1.0 have a very, very fundamental value it provides, but don't go overboard with it. Don't release a version of your SaaS that's truly should be 2.0, but it's 1.0. And as I said with the Gmail example, maybe your first version of the 1.0 of Gmail is going to be simply when an email comes in, we add a tag of whether it is a cold email or a warm email. Like we talked to this individual before. This is simple. Put it out there, 1.0, because here is the big thing that we need to understand. Once we get access to a higher level amount of API usage on the underlying software we're using, so even if it's not Google, it's some other software like Shopify, that kind of just opens the door. Therefore, when you add those further updates, you don't have to wait those 4 to 6 weeks again. When you add an update, it's just pushed directly onto your SaaS and you're ready to go because you already have the API usage afforded to you. But it seems like, and what you should know if you plan on taking this journey, is at the end of that journey, there's one last wall you got to get through. And that last wall essentially is the platform you're developing your SaaS for going to let you access their API at a scalable amount? And this is beyond Google, this is anything. So knowing that, I mean, everything's risk, right? But that is a risk. That's 100% a risk because there's a chance that they say no. And you have to go through an appeal process and it takes 2 months to launch it, even though the product's been ready. So this is another risk associated with creating this. But here is the silver lining. And I think anyone that's maybe developed on the iOS Apple Store can agree with me on this. When you first started pushing apps out, when the App Store was new, when the App Store just launched, and it wasn't oversaturated, and you still had opportunity, the ability to have an app here and then push it onto the App Store, like the discretion and the review process was very low. They let a lot of apps in. For example, there used to be an app called I think it was like Get Rich or something like that, and it was like a red red dot, and basically someone paid like, it was like the app was worth like $1,000 or 10,000 bucks, and it only did like one thing. Like there was like super niche, and like the point is like the threshold to get into the app store was very low. And I'll be frank, I can't really speak on this completely transparent as we're in the production process and we're still learning this whole review process. And obviously once we get through this entire process, we'll teach it to y'all. But one thing that I can assume is that right now, when it comes to AI SaaS platforms and accessing these different softwares, right now, I'm assuming the threshold is probably low because of the fact that it's so new. So any type of AI SaaS that incurs with any type of software's ecosystem, they probably don't have that high of a threshold when it comes to, are we going to let that app in or not? Are we going to allow extra API usage to it? Because of the fact that this market is only 9 months old. Therefore, your ability to get access to higher API usage from the context of that Gmail app is probably going to be more in your favor. Now, that being said, 3 years from now, we're probably going to get something similar happening here where we're going to have that wall come up specifically for AI SaaS, come up to kind of what we see with Apple and the App Store, where an app that maybe would have passed in 2013 is not going to pass in 2023. And similarly here, an app or a software that would have passed now would not pass in 2026, even if it has the same functionality on launch as 1.0. Therefore, knowing this, it's kind of, there's a term in business, or I think it's maybe government, it's like the grandfather clause, where essentially your ability to do that underlying thing was okay back then, and it's still okay because of the fact that you got your app in through the door, you got the API usage. But in theory, if you would have done the exact same process and tried it 3-4 years from now, they probably would have rejected your software. They probably would have rejected the functionality of your software because it's oversaturated. Maybe they got too many SaaSes. Maybe they can't afford that much API usage because they've already delved out these companies as the ones that are going to handle that specific pain point you're handling. So essentially the idea is that Gmail, right? So we come back to that Gmail. You launch your Gmail software SaaS within the next 6 months or next year. I'd say 6 months. I'm just hyper competitive like that. But in the next 6 months, you're going to have a significant advantage because when other SaaSes come in, so you launch, this is the race line. You launched your SaaS right here. You're running. And then essentially when you've kind of established, hey, we need this API for this specific use case, but then other ones start coming in and they want to do the same pain point you're doing. But the problem is that they're going to have to go through that wall of, are we going to allow you to get access to the API? You've already been grandfathered in, so you don't even have a wall anymore. You can keep running. But they might run into a pretty hefty wall here, and they might have higher discretion to prove why they deserve that API in that context. So I want to make this video real quick. I know this is super niche. And this is probably another reason why I've been encouraging everyone that watches this channel to really delve into this topic, because of the fact that it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As we learn more here at Corbin AI and WebCafe AI Nexus, I plan on educating y'all on this topic as we are now getting into the latter stages of this SaaS development. We plan on launching this. It will be launched in October. So if you're watching this in November, we've already launched it, but we have finished our AI SaaS, at least 1.0, and we're in the production stage and we're about to launch it. Really exciting stuff. I'm super stoked. I plan on making 2 videos on it. One video of like me more casually talking to my viewer base, and then one more like, explaining the platform, the use case of the platform in the context of someone that doesn't even know who I am, watches the video and be like, I actually want to use this service, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so if you like this video, make sure you leave a like for the value here. I think the next thing we plan on doing here is we plan on developing a plugin for this AI SaaS we're about to drop. And then my plan and my intention is once I have a full comprehension of this entire process from ins and outs, start to finish, every little nuance, like this little nuance, I do plan on essentially doing an entire YouTube series where I build out a new SaaS with for a very specific pain point, and I show from start to finish everything. I mean, I'm gonna take the extra mile here. I'm gonna take it to like 10x. So I plan on probably getting a whole separate laptop just for this, and essentially having it so you can see everything. Because a lot of the times when you're coding in local machines and coding in staging environments, there can be a security risk. But I'm gonna do this right. I'm gonna, VM machine everything. So you're gonna be able to see the entire process from start to finish. But first, we want to kind of get a full grasp of this entire process. So without further ado, if you like this kind of video, make sure to check out the playlist at the end of this video. I do more talks like this, and more recently, more talks on this topic. Without further ado, I'll see you in the next video.
Thanks for tuning in. And yes, surprise, I'm an AI avatar. Make sure to explore more here at Corbin AI, where we demystify AI for your personal and business life. Until next time.